like and subscribe. Now, what's some popular self-care / self-love advice that is actually really toxic? If they can't handle my worst, they don't deserve my best. Funny how those people are always at their worst. Always trust your feelings. This advice is everywhere. No, oftentimes our feelings require introspection to work through them and make positive change. That you should expect unconditional support, love, and acceptance from friends or romantic partners. Popular idea, but if people really care they will tell you when you are harming yourself or others rather than just keep the vibe chill. Unconditional support does not mean they go along with whatever you want. It means they care about you and support you, even when you make bad decisions. And sometimes, supporting you means telling you how it is. Live your truth. There is a fine line between authenticity and being an a-hole. I've yet to meet a person who uses "I'm speaking my truth" who didn't clearly mean I don't care how incorrect or hurtful what I'm about to say is. If you don't accept it, you're disrespecting me. Yup, it's more like, I only live in my truth, the rest of the world be damned it. They don't align. Show them what they are missing. No, just do better for yourself. I feel like spite is a great motivator for starting an activity strong, but it's not reliable over time. I'd like to return this coat. May I ask why? Spite. I'm returning it out of spite. Okay, I don't know if our return policy covers spite. Ignore the haters. Sometimes the haters are people who love you and want to warn you of potential pitfalls, such as MLMs, cults, abusive relationships, etc. Update. A few people are saying that the definition of haters is essentially only people who are hating for the wrong reasons. I agree, that's what this advice intends to communicate. Basically, don't pay any attention to people who project consistent irrational negativity your way. My concern is that this phrase is so easily misapplied as a self-love mantra, which ultimately serves to keep some vulnerable people from listening to the valid and well-intentioned concerns of loved ones. It can be used by a manipulative person to keep victims / vulnerable followers in line. I like haters gonna hate better because it implies there is a pattern, like, oh, that person is always hating so of course they're hating now. But if your sister is usually supportive and definitely not a hater by nature and is suddenly very concerned that your relationship is abusive, listen up. I think it comes down to the idea that you have, arguably, more to lose by disregarding a well-intentioned friend than by paying attention to an ill-intentioned one. I appreciated the feedback and did not find any of you to be haters. I'm a stupid idiot person who doesn't understand the acronym. Can someone please tell me what MLM means? Multilevel marketing. It basically means a pyramid scheme, I think. I have a friend who is very sucked into the girl boss subculture that has her working all hours on a business that makes no money, then doing self-care in the form of spending the little money she makes on manicures or expensive beauty products that other people have told her are self-care. Self-care and self-love is sometimes admitting that you need to stop perusing something that isn't working and is making you miserable, even if it's what you thought you wanted, and even if everyone is telling you to keep going and not to give up. The sort of positivity that relies on dragging other people down. I see it the most around body image issues in particular, but can apply to other things too, and I just think it's really sad. It doesn't solve any of the underlying issues, just makes more people feel rubbish about themselves. I really hate that bones are for dogs. Real women have curves being thrown around. Great work against body shaming you're doing there, buddy /s. Also, 0 isn't a size. Like, WTF is that? I used to be a size 0. It's the size the company made the jeans. It's not really advice, but it's popular for people to label themselves as brutally honest. Honesty is good, but beware of people who are more interested in the brutality than the honesty. I once read something that said honesty without kindness is cruelty, and I think about that a lot when I'm deciding whether or not to say something. This and kind is not the same thing as nice. That was one that made me think too. The difference between honesty and brutal honesty is something called tact. My stepfather delighted in upsetting family members by telling them stuff that was truthful, but in a very callous way. Then when called on it, would just say, "What? I'm just telling the truth." No, you just like to upset people by verbalizing their insecurities. No, you just like to upset people by verbalizing their insecurities. That was beautifully put. I'm going to use it next time someone tells me they're brutally honest. One of my ex-best friends would insult my body, my looks and basically everything, and would always say I'm just being honest, I'm just stating my opinion. One day I finally snapped and just said I never asked, and left. Glad to say we are not friends anymore, lol. I used to be one of these guys, because some people do like brutal honesty, but then it came up during reviews at work, and that I need to work on emotional intelligence. I scoffed at first. Then I started researching EI, and one article or session I came across that really shooketh me was brutally honest. Why not constructively honest or compassionately honest? And it really opened my mind to develop my EI more. It really resonated with me because it focused more on problem solving than problem presentation. Cut off anyone that doesn't bring you peace. Obviously this applies to people who are constantly, deliberately making you miserable. But a stressful situation or argument with a friend that you care about doesn't count if you haven't attempted to work it out with them. Once you fall out of love with someone, you cannot fall back in love with them. Worst advice I ever got. I'm so glad I gave it a second try. True enough. People change and develop all the time. In 20 years time you're two completely different people with new experiences, wisdom, education, pressures, interests. The idea that you can't fall back in love with someone was probably made up by the most stubborn types of people who fail to see how anything can change and why they ever should try. I know it is cheesy, but the line "a successful marriage requires falling in love many times, always with the same person" is absolutely spot on. Be who you are is only good advice if you're a good person. A lot of people take this to mean that literally anything and everything about yourself is above criticism, and yeah, it's super effing toxic. It's basically don't improve yourself. Stop texting people first to see who your friends are. What if they're doing the same thing and you just ended a friendship due to a misunderstanding? Any form of testing your relationships like that is basically heading towards abuse territory. Imagine if a guy decided to stop responding to his girlfriend to see if she loves him enough. Yeah, no. I will say though, there's a difference between people deciding to do a test and people that realize they're the only one putting effort in and get tired. Relationships should be reciprocal, but they should also just be driven by want for interaction. If you text first all the time, but feel fine about your relationship, then it is a fine relationship just the way it is, because that's how you're compatible as people. But if you feel you need more back from that person, it's not compatible the way it is. Why are you sad? You have everything to be happy. Even if there's few happy things in your life, you don't need to be ashamed to feel sad or depressed. The parents tell you when you say you are depressed. Also, if your parents had hardships growing up, you quickly learn to never be sad or complain about anything in front of them. One of the most toxic mindsets is you can't have insert mental illness here because you're in a good situation. In case you needed to be reminded, Sharon, mental illness doesn't discriminate. It doesn't exclusively affect minorities and oppressed groups. Also, that's kind of the whole difference between having feelings and having mental illness. Feeling depressed, mood, when something bad happens is perfectly normal, and it will pass with time. Having depression, the disorder, is not a reaction to a bad situation that makes you feel bad temporarily. It's a reaction to your internal brain chemistry being a bit wonky, and you can't fix that by just improving your situation in life, because it literally affects your ability to feel emotions in the way you normally would. I have anxiety. It's normal for all of us to feel anxious emotion when we feel threatened or stressed about something. Anxiety disorder makes my brain feel threatened and stressed about, well, life, going to the shops, walking the dog. Right now I'm mildly anxious about this comment and how people will read and react to it. Feeling anxious all the time about everything is anxiety disorder, not anxiety emotion. It's not situational. It's in my brain. Don't let yourself act like the victim. Had someone tell me not to let my wife feel like a victim after being sexually assaulted. I hear people say this a lot because they think it helps real victims feel less like one. But people need to process things. They can't just run through the healing process by pretending it didn't happen. There's no wrong way to parent. As a child of abuse, there are absolutely wrong ways to parent. Frankly, I'm of the opinion that the majority of chronic mental illnesses are the result of shitty parenting practices, because shitty parenting can F up everybody's system. Every parent should consult a child psych professional just like they consult a pediatrician about their child's well-being. They are professionals who have the education to read research studies regarding child development and can direct a parent on how to raise a healthy child. It really should be there's no single right way to parent, but there are many wrong ways to parent. Guilt is a wasted emotion. Pretty sure it was Wayne Dyer who published this nonsense in the 80s. Having at least some guilt is a good sign that you're not a psychopath. The way my doc phrased it makes total sense to me. Is this emotion useful? In the case of guilt, ask yourself if it's useful to you. Does it help you learn something, change a bad behavior, prevent you from hurting someone in the future? Then it's useful. If you're feeling guilty over something and you analyze it and come to the realization that it's not useful, likely because you legitimately shouldn't feel guilty about it, then allow yourself to let go of the guilt. It works well with almost any negative emotion I may be struggling with. Yet, recognizing the usefulness of emotions is so important, especially an effort needs to be made to address negative emotions. Everyone likes to recognize happiness and love, but even anger is super important. Both me and my wife got to a way better place in our relationship and in our professional lives when we used the anger we felt at times. I know you understand likely, but for others, I don't mean using the anger as to scream and yell at each other. That is unhealthy anger. However, anger does serve a purpose. It wants to protect us from feeling as a written off non-entity. It protects our selfhood. Anger can give you strength to let yourself be acknowledged in private and public life. Things often get worse and slide into resentment and rage. If anger is not recognized or dealt with, you can get so much further in relationships when you recognize that either you or the other person are angry for a reason. It doesn't matter if you think the other person is wrong for feeling a certain way, however, you do need to recognize they are feeling that emotion. Once an emotion is acknowledged and validated as an "I understand you are feeling this way about me," then afterwards you can go on to explore the reason why. Often you can then even talk to each other about the reason, and at least between the wife and me, we have talked each other out of being angry. Do whatever feels right. Sometimes what feels right is cutting your veins open, but that's not gonna heal you. There's also the problem that sometimes we have to go through some unpleasant things in the short term to get worthwhile benefits in the long term. If you always avoid things that make you uncomfortable, you're probably stunting your own growth. Most of the personal development I've achieved in the past couple years was found exactly that way. That one thing I didn't want to do was usually what I had to do in order to obtain the long-term results I was searching for. Bloodletting is a long forgotten medical art indeed. Detoxes and cleanses. I have found that taking a break from your poison is very helpful, though when you come back to it, you get like 10x the effects cause your tolerance resets. If people don't like you for you who are, that's their problem. No, sometimes you're the a-hole. 9/10 the common denominator rule stands. If you run into an a-hole every now and then, that's normal. If everyone you interact with is an a-hole, you're the a-hole. My dad's version of this was, if everywhere you go smells like dog sh, it's probably on your shoe. People use this advice in such a wrong way. It's supposed to mean 1. Don't be ashamed of being unique and doing your own thing. 2. Follow your dreams despite what doubters say. 3. Do the morally right thing, even if it makes you unpopular. But people think it means be an a-hole and offer no apologies to anyone you hurt or offend. Nope. The truth is, sometimes you aren't perfect just the way you are. Sometimes the way you are is unacceptable because you're a rude, inconsiderate jackoff. In that case, you do need to change. Any kind of advice that tells you to test friendships by withholding contact to see if they'll notice, or straight up tells you to drop friends that don't reach out to you regularly, this is a very selfish and passive aggressive thing to do. If you miss your friend, then call them up. Don't play cat and mouse games. Maybe they have shit going on in their lives. The world does not revolve around you. I don't mind being the one to reach out when I'm clearly the only one reaching out. I do wonder how much the person actually values me. Not in a ref you and all the other shit got going on way, but more like, if you aren't reaching out to me, I just sort of wonder why we are friends. I have a friend who will reach out, but only to discuss her problems. Never any other time. Never to invite me along to anything. Never to ask about me or ask to hang out. Nothing but ranting about her problems. So I stopped responding. I want to be the kind of friend who is there for my friends when they need to rant, but not when that's all I'm good for. This is reasonable, but I think it's worth also considering their response when you reach out to them. Some people have social anxiety issues and might not feel comfortable initiating, but if they always show up when you invite them, it's a sign they value your friendship. Follow your heart. Honestly, this statement almost never works. Sometimes love can be toxic, and maybe the correct decision is painful. Maybe it pains you to leave someone. Your heart shouldn't fool you. Your heart is stupid. Listen to your heart, but follow your head. Unfortunately, my head is also stupid. I've had some luck following my stomach. The how not to give a ref nonsense. I agree. Don't give a ref what people think if you enjoy a certain type of music, but do give a ref about how your actions affect other people. Unfortunately, it seems that many people just take it to mean don't care that you might hurt other people. In order to self-care and self-love, it is important to consider what consequences your actions have on the world around you. There is a whole industry built around what I call narcissism or self-help. It essentially boils down to everyone else is wrong. You're always right. The only problem you need to fix is that you care too much about what other people think. There is definitely something to be said for people who are far too self-conscious, but social interaction is a core concept for being a healthy, happy human. You aren't going to find happiness by turning into a sociopath. The problem is that the type of advice that you give an anxiety-ridden introvert is not the same type of advice that a Kardashian needs to hear. I've decided the way to think about this advice is don't give a ref what other people think of you, but absolutely do give a ref how you make other people feel, though it's still not super helpful. Humans are social creatures and you can't just decide to turn off the part of your brain that craves acceptance. The whole blood is thicker than water advice, where you should feel obligated to be loyal to your family, no matter what. If they are toxic or abusive, then there is no reason for you to keep that around in your life, especially if it is detrimental to your own well-being/mental health. Just be yourself. Myself is a guy who likes to work minimum wage, part-time jobs that require no mental input, and then spend the rest of his time playing video games and eating junk food. He's overweight, underpaid, and has no interaction with his friends or family. I don't want to be myself. I want to be a better version of myself. I think it's more of a don't fake who you are to others, or else you'll have to fake all the time. Self-improvement is good, and if successful will genuinely change who yourself is. Find a job you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. First of all, even a job you love is going to suck point often. That's why they pay you to do it. This advice leaves you feeling like a failure whenever you have a bad day at work. Plus, there's a lot of value in working for a living and finding your satisfaction at a more personal level. I love what I do, and let me tell you something, I've worked some days. Brian David Gilbert, as I reminded my boss earlier this week, there are things I like to do, and there are things that I'm good at. Those don't always overlap, and that's okay. Positive vibes only. You just need to stay positive. People use it because they think it's uplifting, but it's actually quite dismissive. Often people say it when people voice sadness, frustration, emotional fatigue, anger, basically any other emotion but happiness. A positive attitude can get you a long way, but so can acknowledging and letting yourself/others feel emotions. Toxic positivity. In my experience, this tends to also lead to those same positivity pushers calling people negative or depressing when they are just being realistic, grounded in reality. I have a nasty chronic illness. I'm very realistic about what is happening, what is coming. Am I pretty upbeat most of the time? Yeah. Do I make increasingly inappropriate jokes about it? Absolutely. When asked about what it actually is, what it does, what my future holds, am I very honest with people? Because I'm honest with myself. You bet. Is it all very deeply unpleasant? Yeah. But it's the reality of the situation. Being super positive or flat out lying isn't going to change that. So why would I expend that energy? Does it sound depressing when hearing about it? I'm sure it does. But it's the truth. If it sounds depressing to someone who doesn't have it, imagine how I effing feel. My husband said this to me at the height of the pandemic, when I was coming home sobbing after 10+ hour shifts as a covered nurse. He asked me to move out because it was too much for him. He learned it from his life coach. Moving out and going through trauma therapy made me realize not only is that really bad advice, it is detrimental to your mental health. Already knew most of it. But now my husband is begging me to come home for his mental health. Edit. Thanks everyone for putting time into comment. Thanks for the awards. Wish I could respond to everyone. To clarify, the life coach is not a therapist. He is a friend of my husband's. I'm encouraging him to see a therapist. I'm guarding my mental health with my life. We will go to marriage counseling when I'm ready. I will not move back in unless I feel loved and supported. I'm not doing this for my daughter. It's for myself first. Also, someone had commented, why go back to somewhere that I cry every day? COVID was an unusual beast, especially at the peak. I had cried once in the 19 years prior to COVID. I saw and did things at the peak of COVID that I had never seen nor done before. It was unprecedented, and we were all unprepared and grossly understaffed. I hate to compare it to actual combat, but it was vaguely like being in a war. COVID is not over, but with the vaccine and the education we have now, it is less terrifying, and the numbers are way down. I hope we don't ever have to go through anything like that again. But if I ever need anyone's A kicked, I know who to go to. Reddit. What about your mental health? What a shitty life coach. Damn, that is rough. What are your plans? I'm not sure I could go back to someone who did that. Jesus, that's beyond shitty from your husband. Hey honey, I know you're struggling on the front lines right now through one of the most world-changing events in our lifetimes. But seeing you so stressed out and defeated makes me feel bad, so please leave. Then when it starts to get better, oh no, I'm sad now without you, please come back. Especially now that it's almost over and I don't have to help you deal with this anymore. Like if he couldn't help shoulder some of that for you, he doesn't deserve you. Instead he listened to a shitty life coach and now has to deal with a shitty life. I'm sorry for what's happened and thank you for everything you've done. I really hope that you get the positive things in life that you deserve. This makes me so angry for you. Move out for my mental health. Move back for my mental health. I don't give a shit about your mental health. Just cater to me. Selfish. So selfish. I'm so sorry, Ob. You deserve an actual partner, not this self-centered baby. This is a cure. Shows a picture of the woods. This is poison. Shows some antidepressants. Shut the F up. Some people need antidepressants to function. Going for a walk in the woods will not just magically cure your depression. If you can't make your own neurotransmitters, store-bought is fine. Be a bad B asterisk TCH. What kind of life are you living? A Wattpad story. Is your dad a Mayfair? I don't understand. Some people point at it. I know that means be self-assured and be confident. I just think that is not a good way to tell someone to be confident. Please don't hate me. Thanks and thank you Kevin 24701 for saying that no proper person should want to describe themselves as bad unless they are just selfish. No, a Wattpad story would involve being sold to One Direction. If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. Basically just a green light to be a shitty human being. I've always considered this one to have been appropriated by shitty people. I think that the core of the saying is that everyone has shitty moments where they aren't a pleasure to be around. It was meant to address other people who only wanted to be with someone who was wonderful all of the time. Unfortunately, the shitty people have taken the phrase over, much like most sayings. Happiness is a choice. Damn, I must be choosing depression then, I guess.